Introduction. Let me first share my screen. So please let me know if you cannot see the slide. And okay, well, thank you again. It's really an honor and a pleasure for me to give this presentation here today. Before we start, let me give you a heads up of what I'm going to do in this presentation. I will first briefly talk about the history of fact checking, and because from that history, it will be really evident to you about why we need crowd-checking in the first place. And then I will talk about what crowd-checking is and what are the components of such systems. And then I will show you with real-time example. I will literally use browser, work on browser to show you how crowd-checking works on social media platforms and how to participate if you're interested in it. So without further ado, let's get started. So the entire history of fact-checking can even date back to 1920s. And in general, we have five big eras. So we firstly have a newsroom era where most fact-checking was done in magazine, in newspaper, and in newsroom. Then we have early internet era where people from the internet, they start to gather evidence and show their fact-checking verdict on their internet blogs. And then we have elite professional era where professional fact checkers, they simply dominate the entire fact checking industry. But right after that, we have 7 year really chaotic period where professional fact checkers start to become ineffective. That is why we have the current transformation from professional fact checkers to crowd checking. And in 2000, and fact checking was actually born really long ago. It was born in 1923 in Time magazine. Back then, Henry Luce was the publisher of Time magazine, and he decided they should hire a researcher to verify every claim in the Time magazine before the publication of that issue. That decision was actually really famous because almost all researchers he hired were women. So that actually also opened the door for women into journalism. Many of them actually became really famous journalists. And then we fast forward to 1988. I was not even born at that time, but from what I know, we had presidential election back then. We had a Bush versus Dukakis election. And there was a really controversial advertisement, which we now call it Willie Horton ad. That was really controversial, but also really impactful to the result. So after that ad, Brooks Jackson from CNN, he thought we couldn't just let those kind of advertisement that lacks context, that is not fair to one side of the political party, to just broadcast on air. They should be added with context or correction if they're wrong. So he basically started this so-called ad watch journalism movement. Basically, they want to dissect political ads on air. So this is the moment when fact-checking moved from the back-end office in Time magazine to the front page in newspaper, to the newsroom where anchors started to dissect each political claims. After that, we had internet. Internet signifies the rise of citizen journalism because they gave more people ways to find their fact-checking source and to express themselves in the internet. So in 1995, Barbara and David Mickelson, they founded Snopes.com. Snopes.com was firstly designed to debunk urban rumor, but it went to fact-check political misinformation really quickly. And in early internet era, we also have blogs and bloggers. And one of those bloggers called Ken Lane, he thought we should have some online accountability against all this mainstream media. So he started this online blogger fact-checking movement. Basically, those bloggers, they use internet to find their source and they post their fact-checking verdict in their blogs. So you see, internet really democratized fact-checking, but they also create all kinds of chaos because different people have different views, have different ways of doing fact-checking. They also have different opinions. So what is a good way? What is a correct way, so-called correct way to do the fact-checking? That is when people start to demand professionalism. Professional fact-checkers, they still use internet because they want to use the internet for their fact checks to reach more people. But they kept the professionalism with it. They are journalists. So following the journalism practice and their expertise, they design a bunch of protocols for the fact checkers to follow so as to maintain as neutral and objective as possible when they do their fact checkings. And during this elite professional era, there are two really important organizations. First, in 2023, factcheck.org was founded. It was founded by Brooks Jackson from CNN and Kathleen Ho Jemison from University of Pennsylvania. So if you still remember him, he was the guy who started AdWatch journalism. And one special feature of factcheck.org is that it is funded and held by University of Pennsylvania. So there is no commercial pressure. There is no partisan funding. That is how, at the institutional level, how factcheck.org maintains neutrality. And then in 2007, Bill Adair from Tampa Bay Times, which is a news organization held by Princeton Institute, he founded PolitiFact. One major contribution of PolitiFact is the realization that statements is not binary. It's not like just true or false. Some people say half-true stuff. Right? That is why they designed truth-all meter. Basically, they classify each statement into 6 categories. True, mostly true, half true, mostly false, false, pants on fire. Pants on fire means it is not only false, but ridiculous. And at the same time, Glenn Kessler from the Washington Post, he opened a new section within Washington Post called Fact Checker. And later invented a Pinocchio scale. Basically, the scale from 1 to 4, and when the scale goes up, the nose of Pinocchio also goes longer, which means the falsehood becomes worse. And after that, we were really experiencing a golden era of professional fact checking. In 2009, PolitiFact won Pulitzer Prize. In 2014, Princeton Institute held the first global fact-checking summit. More than 50 fact-checkers from more than 20 countries, they all participated in this fact-checking summit. And they founded the International Fact-Checking Network, which is the moment when fact-checkers from all over the world, they started to coordinate with each other. And in 2016, Facebook started to partner with professional fact checkers, including factcheck.org and PolitiFact, for their online content moderation. But right after that, we have a 7-year chaotic period. We have a really controversial 2 presidential election, and there was so much misinformation around this 2 presidential election. Also, actually, there are many arguments saying that the Capitol riot, partly the reason of why we had the Capitol riot after the second election was because of the election misinformation. And right after the second election, we also had COVID. We have COVID pandemic. And there was so much COVID misinformation, misinformation about COVID itself and about COVID vaccine. Reports showing that even up to today, many Americans still don't really know about what is true and what is false about certain statements around COVID. One of the reasons why we had so much misinformation was the booming of social media usage. Twitter, now we call it X, has become the mainstream news consumption for us for daily purpose. And we also have many new modality of social media. We have TikTok, which is short video. We also have Instagram, which is a really popular photo sharing social media platform from the Meta family, from the Facebook family. And you see from this period, I assure you, professional fact checkers, they were doing their best. They really did their best. But you see nothing from them, right? They were buried under the vast misinformation on social media platforms. So after this period, people start to realize that there are 2 major problems about misinformation, social media, or like modern misinformation governance that cannot be addressed by professional fact checking. The first is scalability issue. For example, factcheck.org published about 2 to 3 fact checks per day. And PolitiFact, in the past 19 years, it only published about 6,625 fact checks in total, which is about 348 per year. But on social media platforms, millions of potentially misleading claims are posted every single day. Professional fact checkers, they have to be professional. So they have to hire professionals and they have to follow a professional standard. Those things make them accurate, but it makes them slow. So by design, they simply couldn't catch up with the speed and the scale of the dissemination of misinformation on social media platforms. Another problem, which is far more serious, is the trust issue. Well, if you look back at the entire history of fact checking, you will see it is somehow liberal, right? It's all institutional rules trace back to elite media and academic spaces, like Time Magazine, CNN, Princeton Institute, University of Pennsylvania. And so people start to question the political neutrality of professional fact checkers. So, for example, if professional fact checkers fact check some conservative statement, conservative people from the right, they're going to question, well, you're just targeting us, or you don't believe us because you don't hold the same view of this world, right? So that is why there has been a long argument saying that PolitiFact has a history of anti-right bias. And a relatively new survey from Pew Research Center shows that Republicans are far more likely than Democrats to say that fact checkers tend to favor one side. So these two things you see, by design, professional fact checkers couldn't just address them. But crowd-checking is designed exactly to address these two issues. For the scalability issue, instead of using professionals, crowd-checking, they want to utilize the participation of regular users on the social media platforms. For example, Twitter global-wise has 666 million users, regular users. When that number goes to 2 billion for TikTok, 3 billion for Instagram. So even if you just use 1% of these individuals, you're gonna still have a much larger fact checker pool than any professional fact checkers combined. So this crowd-checking method is much more scalable. To maintain political neutrality, the key is crowd evaluation. For example, on Twitter, the crowd-checking system on Twitter, each fact check after being produced has to be evaluated by on average 85 evaluators. That number is 2 to 3 in the case of PolitiFact. Right? And so in crowd checking, each fact check needs to pass a consensus among much more people. And what's more important is they require a really special form of consensus, which we call it the cross-ideological consensus. Basically, each people from with different ideologies, they tend to disagree with each other, mostly on many issues, right? But if now they all agree that the fact check is good, the fact check is useful, that means at least this fact check doesn't favor any one side. It's not saying the fact check couldn't be political. It can be political, but it is convincing enough. It provides concrete enough evidence that everybody agree, right? So this cross-ideological consensus is a central component of how crowd-checking maintains its political neutrality. Well, technically, crowd-checking achieve this political neutrality and scalability through a multi-stage fact-checking pipeline. As with all fact-checking, you need somebody to initiate the fact-checking process. That is the job of note writer. They identify potentially misleading posts and write fact-check annotations. We call these annotations notes. Once the note is written, it is temporarily hidden from the general public. At this very stage, it is only visible to note raters for the crowd evaluation. Note raters is going to evaluate the helpfulness and accuracy of all these notes, and they provide ratings. They can rate the note as helpful, somewhat helpful, or not helpful. All these ratings, they're going to be sent to a machine learning algorithm called the bridge-based algorithm. The algorithm simply does two things. First, it estimates rater ideologies from past ratings. Second, it asks whether this note receives support from raters with diverse ideologies. So that is why it is called bridge-based algorithm, because the goal of this algorithm is to find the node that can bridge people from all sides together for the agreement. If the answer is yes, the node becomes public. If the answer is no, the node remains hidden from the general public waiting for more ratings to come. Once the node becomes public, it's going to be visible to every user on X. Anyone who has ever shared, liked, or commented on the post is going to receive a notification. Well, here is an example from Twitter. This is a fairly recent tweet about hantavirus on the cruise, and it is saying hantavirus cannot be spread human to human, which is wrong. And this note was written exactly against this point with concrete evidence. And this note already become public. So anyone who has been ever reading this tweet is gonna see this public note to correct their belief in this statement. Okay. Twitter is the pioneer of crowd-checking. During 2022, they were piloting the program, and in 2023, they formally launched it, and they named it Community Notes. Up until this month, X Community Notes already has 1.4 million contributors, and they have written and evaluated around 1.8 million fact-check annotations. If you can still remember all these fact checks produced by professional fact checking, this number is much, much larger. And then we have been seeing a fast transformation of online content moderation. In 2024, YouTube began its testing of its own crowd-checking system. In January 2025, Meta has made a bold move. They announced a full replacement of their third-party fact checkers by their crowd-checking system. That means on Facebook, on Instagram, on Thread, no professional fact checking is there anymore. Every content moderation is done by their own crowd checking system. In July 2025, TikTok launched its own crowd checking system called Footnote. All this crowd checking system, they all rely on the same structure: note writing, crowd evaluation, algorithmic aggregation, largely because they all follow X lead. And I also want to highlight here that people contribute voluntarily. The platform doesn't pay them anything. And also, contributors are regular users. The platform never requires any fact-checking qualification. And yes, people will make mistakes, but the crowd evaluation and the cross-ideological consensus is a really strong safeguard against individual errors. Also, all the contributors are anonymous, which means you don't really need to worry about they're going to trace back to you if you fact check somebody or if you fact check somebody who is famous. So everything is anonymous. Also, one central component of trust is transparency. And in terms of this, Twitter has been doing a really fantastic job. They open source all the note data, all the rating data, and they open source the entire code base of the Braid-based algorithm, which is how we can do research on that. And so anyone can audit the data, anyone can run the algorithm, anyone can propose improvements to the systems. Okay, so what does crowd-checking actually look like, and how do you join in? Let's open Twitter and find out. And I will show you how it looks like on Facebook. Okay. Again, please let me know if you cannot see my browser. To join X Community Nodes, you can in Google just search X Community Node, and you're gonna see this website. If you click that, the first button you can click is sign up. If you click sign up, you go to sign up page and you can just click sign up here. So you see the eligibility requirement is really minimum. You just need to have an account. You don't violate rules. And the account is at least 6 months old, and you have a verified phone number. Really small, really low eligibility requirement. You don't need anything. You don't need fact-checking qualification. After signing up, you just wait. They're going to admit all the applicants on a periodic basis. And if there are more applicants than slot, they're going to randomly admit accounts. From my personal experience, if you're signing up today, it will take about 2 to 3 weeks for you to be admitted. So it's not a really long period. After being admitted, you can start contribute. And every person starts as a note rater. How do you rate note? There are 2 ways for you to rate note. The first is really simple. You just use X, you just use Twitter, you just browse on that. When you browse on that, and if you are a contributor, sometime you're going to see this invisible box. This box is not visible to other regular X user. This means there has been a note written against this post. If you click that, you can even click see all notes on this post. Well, in this case, there's only one note, but sometimes some posts can receive several notes. And this is the note you are going to rate. After rating that, you can rate the note as helpful, somewhat helpful, or not helpful. And optionally, you can even give your reason why do you think the note is helpful or not helpful. For example, you think the note cite high quality sources. So you can click here. You think the note is really easy to understand, you can also click here. Well, in the case that you don't think the note is helpful, you can still provide your reason. For example, the note is absolutely wrong, or the note is simply an opinion or speculation. And after you choose your choice, you can click submit. And after that, your rating is going to be received by the system, is going to be processed by the algorithm. Another way to contribute is that once you become a contributor, if you click more, you're going to have one more feature here called community notes. Again, this tab is not visible to regular X user. If you click that, you're going to go to a special website designed for community contribution, which is called community note website. And you see there are two tabs. You can click new tabs. Under this tab, every note is newly written, and they are showing to you on chronological order. So you can just browse here and read all the tweet and read all the note, and you provide your rating. That's another way actually to consume on this social media. Another way is to view notes in Needs Your Help tab. Tweet inside this tab also they just receive notes, but these tweets they are projected to have high visibility in the future, which means all these notes they need some kind of urgent care because all these tweets they're going to be more influential or more far-reaching in the future. So if the note can become public quicker than other nodes, it can help curb misinformation faster and more effective. Okay, once you start rating, you're going to receive a metric called rating impact. Rating impact is a measurement of your rating accuracy. So what I mean by that, if you rate a note helpful and the note becomes public, then that means your rating is accurate. But if you rate something that is you rate as helpful, but the note becomes rate the note as not helpful, but the note still becomes public, that means you judge it wrong, right? In this case, your rating impact decreases. So basically, the accuracy is measured by the alignment between your judgment and the final system level crowd decision. Once your rating impact reaches 5, you can start writing. You're going to be promoted to a note writer. Note writer can still rate, but they have additional ability to write note. And how do you write note? Again, really easy. Browse on X. For example, if you just browse on X and you see this tweet, and you think this tweet is misleading, well, it's not necessarily misleading in this case, but if you think this is misleading and you have evidence for that, you can click this button and you're going to see a special tab called Write a Community Note. This tab, again, is not visible to any user that is not a note writer. If you click that, just a reminder of just write good note, and you can click continue, and then you are into the note writing interface. First, you have to indicate why do you think this note is misleading. Well, for example, it contains factual error, it is digitally altered, it means important context. It is also optional, a multiple choices question. You can also choose several ones. And here is where you put your notes, fact check annotation. And then this is basically asking you whether you included a source link in your fact check annotation. And you can click submit. Once you submit the note is going to appear here. Well, of course, you cannot rate your own note, but other people is gonna rate your note. And once you start writing, you're gonna have another metric called rating impact. Basically, if you write a note and the note becomes public, your rating impact increases. And if you write a note that the note is rated not helpful by a reader with diverse ideologies, your rating impact decreases. Basically, write a good note, high quality note, your rating impact increases. And once your writing impact is high enough, you're gonna get a special status called top contributor or top writer. Top writer will be access to a special feature called note request. What I mean by this is the following. So let's go back to this tweet. If you're a regular user on X and you're not a writer, but you think this tweet is misleading, you can still request a commenting note. This tab is available to every user on X. It's available. You don't need to be a contributor to have this option. If you click that, you can directly submit your request. But sometimes if you have a source link, you can put your source link here to help the note writer to write a note. After you submit your request is going to appear here. Your request is going to stay here for 24 hours and is only visible to top contributor. So you see this tweet, under this tweet, it has a special tab called multiple people requested a commenting note, right one? So for top contributor, they don't need to find a tweet to write a note by doing regular browser. They can just browse here to find those potentially misleading posts that is suspicious to many people, and they can just start from here. Well, and of course, if you're a top contributor, you're gonna have these special badges, which looks pretty cool. Yeah, and that's basically. Oh yeah, and also I want to highlight here. You see, I have a contributor name called this bunch of things, and this is randomly assigned. You are not gonna, you cannot write your own username or contributor name. This is just randomly assigned to you. This is to protect your identity information, because if you write a name that may signal some kind of person of you. Also, if you notice when I provide rating, there's nothing about this note writer, right? You don't get to see the race of the note writer, the gender of the note writer, the name of the note writer, and any user information about the note writer, right? Also, when you provide rating, you don't get to see others' rating, right? This is to help you be independent, not affected by others' judgment. And when you provide the rating is entirely anonymous. There's no mechanism for anybody to trace back to your account. Okay, so that is about X commenting note. Let me show you the Meta commenting note. Actually, it's really interesting story. I applied for joining Meta commenting note like several months ago, and I haven't been admitted because I'm not a regular user on Facebook. But this afternoon, I received the news I got admitted. So my original plan was to confess to you. I couldn't show you from the inside, but now I can. Yeah. So if you want to join Meta commenting notes, you just search on Google Meta commenting notes and you click the first link. After you click that, you're gonna go to this website. If you go down, you can see sign up on Facebook or Instagram or Threads. Let's do Facebook. If you click that and if you log in, you're gonna see this page. And simply click join waitlist. And then you wait. I wait a pretty long time, perhaps because I am not a regular user on Facebook. But if you're regular users, you may be admitted more quickly. I'm not really sure because they are not that transparent about how they admit applicants. Oh, also, one thing that is noteworthy is that although they announced the full replacement of professional fact checking by their Crowdchecking, Meta's commenting notes is still under beta test. They have produced all kinds of reports showing that Crowdchecking is working, but I think more features or more testing is needed to ensure that the system to ensure the system integrity. Okay, after you join the waitlist and after you're being admitted, you go to Facebook. On Facebook, you have a bunch of items here. And after being admitted, you're going to see community notes. If you click that, you're going to see this interface. And on Facebook, you don't have writing impact or rating impact. You don't have those measures. You can start rating nodes, you can start writing node. There's no threshold to bar you from that. So for example, if you see this Facebook post and some node is written against it, you can rate it helpful, and in this case, you have to indicate why do you think it is helpful, and you can rate it is not helpful. Again, you have to indicate why it is not helpful. And in the case of meta, you don't have the choice of somehow or somewhat helpful. You can also write node immediately. You can start to write the node now. And there's no top contributor. There's no all this extra features. So you can see your past ratings. For example, this afternoon, I rate this node helpful. And you can also write a note. I haven't written any notes, but you can also write a note and your history will appear here. Okay, and that is about meta community node. Okay, I'm running out of time, and so let me summarize this presentation. Fact checking has spent 100 years trying to keep up with misinformation. And I don't think the professional they failed. They had their moment, they had their peak. It's just that the problem of misinformation outgrew them. And given the current misinformation dissemination, people need a system that is scalable, transparent, and cross-ideological. And the current solution and the promising solution is crowd-checking. And to make it a better place, to make it a better tool, all we need is your participation. And that is my presentation. Thank you. Any question are welcome. Thank you. Yeah. So I think, Barbara, you can take over now.
Okay. Maybe you want to stop sharing your screen so
Oh,
I
yeah.
can see people's
Sure.
faces. So we've got a nice group of people here. I'm sure there's interesting thoughts to be shared, questions to be asked. I'm going to suggest that you raise your little virtual hand so that we can see, since not everybody fits on one screen. Okay, so I've raised my own hand. I see. Janice, you've got a question.
Yeah, I just wondered, maybe you said this and I didn't catch it, but do you have any sense for, does the crowd checking method, how much of the misinformation is it likely to be catching? Like there's just such a flood.
Uh, I think so. First, I don't really know how much misinformation is there, so I couldn't give you like a exact proportion of how much misinformation they're gonna catch. But from the current performance, it has caught much more misinformation than any professional fact checking combined. And it's not perfect. It's not gonna like catch every misinformation, but it is the most scalable way to fight against the scale of the current misinformation on social media platforms. Yeah, as you can see, community nodes already fact checks about 1.5, 1.8 million posts. That is already a lot, although there are more than millions of posts on the internet. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I believe you said that Instagram has introduced this,
Yes.
because I spend a lot of time on Instagram. I'm not
Oh,
proud of that completely, but I have never noticed anything that carried any information that it was
yeah.
crowd
I
checked.
think so. Meta, every crowd checking, like in every platform, crowd checking is still piloting on Meta. So I would say there may not that many public nodes showing up on Meta. And also, cross ideological consensus is a really strong safeguard against quality. So if the quality is not good enough, the node is not going to be public because they don't want something that is true but being fact checked. That's even worse than misinformation not being fact checked.
Yeah.
So that is why I think that is why now you don't get to see many public note on Instagram. But if you become a contributor, you may see more invisible box under the post, and you may start contributing by provide your rating. Yeah.
So obviously the value of this depends on how well they identify the ideological standing of their checkers.
Yeah.
What can you tell us? What do you know about how that works?
Okay. I can give you, so basically, the mechanism of how it does this is by using the disagreement between people. And luckily, on social media, on US social media platforms, people don't agree with each other a lot based on ideologies. So this estimation is accurate, is pretty accurate actually. Let me show some number. Uh, all this left rater estimated, identified by the machine learning algorithm, they don't agree with 90% or 95% of right-leaning fact-checking annotations, which same thing, the number is pretty much the same for all the right-leaning raters. So you see, they really don't agree with what they don't like, right? And this is a pretty good evidence of good estimation of ideologies. There are also many anecdotal evidence showing that the Crowdchecking, the bridge-based algorithm identifies people ideologies pretty well because people really just don't agree with each other based on ideologies on social media platforms.
So, are they rating us all the time? And do we
Oh, no,
have
no, no,
scores? No, this is
no.
just when you become
When you provide rating, so the magic of this algorithm is it doesn't need any extra information from you. You only need your rating. And the data fed into the algorithm is only everyone's rating. It doesn't include your post. It doesn't include your node. It doesn't include anything about this node. It only include your rating to a node. So this just number, and it finds your ideology because you and another, for example, ideological opposed rater, you guys don't agree on many things, on many past node. But now you guys agree on the node. That means that node is helpful. Yeah.
okay. Who else has a question or a comment?
I think Janice also has still have a question.
Yeah, I
Has
just
a
have
question.
a
Yeah.
follow-up based on what Barbara had just asked you. So if if the League of Women Voters has content on Facebook, there's not like a hidden note about something that they posted, right? Like would they know if someone wrote something about it challenging their information?
Uh, if the node doesn't become public, you don't get to know whether there has been a node written against
Okay.
you. But if the post becomes public, everybody will know. So you will know. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm. Makes me want to go back. So,
Mm.
so is Facebook is showing these things now?
Yes.
So I could go, say, to the National League, which has lots and lots of social content, and see if any of them have been challenged.
Yes. You can.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. And if you're a contributor, you can also see the hidden note, right? You can see
Right,
how people don't agree with some kind of statement made by some parties. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Colleen has a question.
Yeah, hi there, and thank you so much. This was very informative. Um, I was wondering when you were showing back on the X signing up as an X rater or contributor or whatever, it said you might not get chosen right away depending on how many openings there are or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that meant there's always a set number of crowdsource people, or is there a percentage of users, or is any of that information even accessible?
So, okay. Good question. I don't really know what's their plan. I don't know like how many contributors they want in the future. But what I know is the number of contributor is increasing over time. So I think they want to admit cohort by cohort. So they want to increase, say, 1,000 contributor this month, 1,000 contributor next month. So you have a gradual increase of contributor number. And you can get to know how many contributors are there because on X, the rating data is published. And each rating is linked to an anonymous identifier. That identifier doesn't give you anything else, just give you this rater gives this rating. And you can get to know how many raters are there each day. The data is updated each day. And I've been tracking this data for a year. I'm pretty sure that the contributors is increasing. So, but I don't really know when they want to stop that.
Okay, Donna
Thank you.
Gardner's got a question.
Is it possible for a group, whether it's a political party or, say, the League of Women Voters, to get lots of people, put on as commenters or whatever, in order to, or as fact checkers or whatever their names are, I can't remember, to actually induce misinformation? Does it, go both ways?
Uh, from what I understand of your question is you're asking if the system can be manipulated. Yeah, that's a really cool question. Yeah. So like every system, there's always a way to manipulate it. But in the case of crowd checking, the manipulation is really hard in the sense that it must be really precise. Because so first, you need to have a bunch of accounts. You never know how many is enough, and you need to let them rate. And you need to let them rate in the way that the bridge-based algorithm is going to estimate them into different ideologies, right? And then you're going to ask them to all rate on the same node to publish some kind of propaganda that is expressed in the node. That needs a really precise manipulation. And also, I think Meta knows this. Not Meta. Community knows, X community knows this. They have been patching the system, patching the algorithm by giving more and more anti-manipulation safeguard. One of the manipulation is really simple. One of the safeguard is really simple. If a node achieves this consensus really fast, it's gonna be posted in the needs your help tab so that more people is gonna rate. So you can control say 100 accounts, but you cannot control others feeding, right? So if you use your account to achieve a consensus, and then the nodes is gonna be visible to many more raters. That those rater they're gonna listen to you. They're gonna just rate us as they wish. And so this kind of manipulation is relatively hard to achieve than a common, say, majority voting system. But that is a really good direction for us to research. It's a really hard direction, but that's a really good question. Yeah. I hope I satisfy you with this answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Barbara's got a question.
My question actually had to do with the fact that kids get on the internets and they've been sued because children have committed suicide as a result of what they've seen. So where does that come in the scheme of things on monitoring, transparency, blocking kids, and how much responsibility? Because I think it's in court, and I think the parents won. The question, of course, is now these organizations are, what do you call it? Trying to do their side of the story again, so they don't have to pay up. But how does that transparency get locked down so that it doesn't get misused by very vulnerable people?
That's a cool question. I think this is beyond the current discussion of crowd-checking, but
Right.
I agree with you that people get abused by the misinformation because their belief is changed by the misinformation.
Right. Okay.
And so I don't really think professional fact checker or crowd checking. Wait, okay, let me rephrase my answer. So whether the fact checking verdict, the fact check can change people's belief really depend on whether people trust it and whether the fact checking itself is of high quality, right? And I would say in the case of crowd checking, it makes more people trust it because if you understand the mechanism and if you experience enough such public nodes, you will see those nodes are somehow objective and neutral. So, but I mean, for kids, it's really hard for them to evaluate whether that is objective or not. So I would say the child control is another thing that's related to content moderation, but a little bit fell outside uh, misinformation control. It is more like the user safety control. And yeah, I would say so. And I don't think I'm not sure if cross-checking the mechanism itself can help with that. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that answer.
Yeah, okay. Herman, Herman, are you there? There you go.
Yes, now I'm there. I had to unmute myself. Uh, from what from what you were talking about, it sounds like the people who contribute are rated for their ideology, but I didn't hear anything about expertise. There are subjects that take a certain amount of expertise in order to intelligently and reliably give an opinion. For example, medical issues and scientific issues. And when I read a fact-checking post, I would like to know that the people are really know what they're talking about, that they're qualified to evaluate the truth or falsehood of a claim. So, is there anything that is being done about that? I would think there should be a way that somebody that has training and expertise and experience is somehow rated better in terms of believability than just any old person or somebody that is making a statement based on their ideology. And let's say, for example, about vaccines, okay, as just one common example. Could you comment?
Well, that's a good question. That's actually one of the somehow people's arguments about the vulnerability of such system because of the expertise issue. And what you are talking, what you're referring to is actually also separated into two things. So first, do they have enough expertise to draft a fact-checking annotations, right? And this is easier in the system because even if you draft a bad, even if you draft a bad notes, bad fact-checking annotations, it's not going to pass the consensus. It's not going to be published. So in the worst case, it's going to only waste everybody's time. It's not going to just publish something that is entirely wrong on the system, on the platform. But your question actually is more important in the crowd evaluation. So what if all the raters they don't understand anything about this node, right? If the node is talking about something that is really scientific, even if it has good stuff, good evidence, how do rater have enough expertise for that? That is indeed a really big question for the crowd-checking system to think about. And for now, again, if rater make mistakes, the node is not gonna be published. From what I observe in the data set, what is published is something that is never wrong. So what get published is basically true. We even annotated many fact-checking many annotations. What's more problematic is when raters don't really know whether they're qualified enough for evaluating the node. They don't do that. Just disengage from that node. So even though that node is correct, the node is not going to be published because of not enough rating or because of wrong rating, which induces not enough consensus, right? In this case, crowd-checking is at risk of not being effective. But that is the good things about crowd-checking. It's also a good thing about crowd-checking is that it really make rare mistakes on real platform. Everything is hidden from the general platform. Mistakes are buried under. Whatever that is published is almost true. So you don't need to worry about a wrong fact check enters public domain. The problem is not enough fact checks enter public domain. Yeah.
Right. Phil Porter.
Trying to get my thumb to work there. Sorry. So I'm trying to figure out if you go into Facebook as a rater, and then there's a commenter above that, how often does it happen that someone actually becomes a commenter? How is that progression happening now? And I guess it goes back to the last question of if the commenter has no scientific background, how are they commenting on something that's scientific? It still makes no sense to me that you're getting veracity out of any of this.
The thing about that is if you have enough crowd, there will be enough people. Say, for example, within the entire human population, there are 1% of them understanding this topic. So if your crowd is big enough, that 1% is enough to give the verdict of this node, right? For example, if the 1% of the crowd is say 850 people, and they have enough expertise to evaluate this node, then their expertise is enough. So that
You're
is
making an assumption that they have that ability, though.
yes. So if no person has that expertise to evaluate the fact-checking notations, from what we observe is that they don't provide a rating. They just disengaged from that fact-checking annotations. So that node is never gonna be public and have any effect on the platform. So the the only thing, the only problem is the good node not becoming public. Worries about bad node becoming public, you don't need to worry about that. The crowd-checking system is really strong against this kind of mistakes. Yeah.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I just simply do not believe you at all related to that. There is a veracity to scientific evidence. And if the people that are commenting on this have no scientific background in that area,
Mhm.
and you have crowds of people that come behind them and say, oh, that looks like that's right. Oh, yes, that, really well explained. Completely wrong, but really well explained. High ratings. It becomes a fact now.
The problem is the fact check annotation must have some source link. So you must have evidence to back your reasoning up. So even if it sounds correct, if the doesn't attach any fact checking concrete evidence link, people are not going to believe that. And if it attach some, for example, scientific, so it attach some link to, say, really famous paper published in Nature. In this case, Rater is going to read that, at least abstract or title of that. And Rater is going to get a sense of the connection between the reasoning in the fact checks and the paper it uses as evidence. And again, I understand your concern, and I believe that concern is real. There may be some mistakes made by the courting system, but in general, that is not a big issue for the system. Yeah. In general, I'm not saying that's absolutely not an issue, but yeah, that is not a big issue for the system. Yeah.
So as I think about that, I don't know. I'm remembering at the beginning of COVID. So my husband's not a person who usually goes on X, but He went on X every morning to see what the latest news was about COVID, and all sorts of major scientists posted stuff, and you know, so there's some things you can tell about whether someone is someone you want to believe or not, and other things are harder to tell, and you don't know who those people are. So I'm just going to say that there's harder things and easier things for crowd checking to be effective for, and I wouldn't argue that all of them you could really get to the bottom of, but probably a fair number you could. Um,
That's a good point. I will leverage your answer if I have
and
this
I
question
mean,
again.
I mean the whole medium is full of comments from people whose names are known, right? So
Mhm.
if there's a scientific claim made and then a bunch of other scientists pile on, and you're listening to a debate among scientists, and if they're all people that have ranty kind of screen names, then probably those aren't people. I mean, uh, yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's not perfect. That's clear. But I'm fascinated. I had no idea that this was going on, so I think I might actually look on Twitter, which I normally avoid doing.
Twitter is a really chaotic
That's
place,
the
but
mo but it's the most developed place to see
yeah,
what's happening here.
yeah,
So as I'm understanding what you said, so I can go and see that there are notes disputing something or
yes.
and supporting too, I suppose.
Uh, for now, if the note is saying the tweet is not misleading, uh,
They
in
don't.
Twitter is not gonna be published, but such notes exist and
Yeah,
is hidden from the general public.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I want to see what it looks like in practice. Um,
Well, that would be you'll really like it. There's
yeah,
also another way to engage with the platform.
yeah. Now I have to think about who I follow because I don't follow a lot of people. So you probably, I don't know. There's a general feed for people who haven't followed a lot of people, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't depend on your following. You can start just browse, and the algorithm is gonna do it work. The feeding algorithm is gonna do it works, and
Yeah,
yeah, and then you will have more and more diverse topics to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? Well, I want to thank you very much. I learned things I had no idea about, and they seem really promising, and I want to learn more. And so I'm glad we got you on here so we could all learn from you. And
Thank you.
I'm glad we've recorded this so we can get it available to more people.
Yeah. Please let me know if you publish on on YouTube.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you
thumb
very
up.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for coming.